What's up, Cardano fam, ADA gang? We have some exciting updates, so hit that subscribe, hit that like. Genesis is coming, says Charles Hoskinson. Let's take a look at the blog from IOHK. But first, the post saying IOG continues turning academic research into practical benefits. The latest example is Ouroboros Genesis, a series of enhancements to the already robust Ouroboros consensus protocol, with countermeasures to protect a network node when it is new or returning after an extended absence. Let's take a look at the full details. Grab a drink, grab a snack. This is a long read, but important. A deep dive into the design and implementation of Ouroboros Genesis. I did compare this with another post also from Cardano. It was identical on a different page. I stuck with this one because it's a cleaner presentation. So very nice. The latest incarnation of the consensus protocol responsible for the reliability and security of Cardano. So very nice. Let's take a look at this. Ouroboros Genesis is a series of enhancements to the already robust Ouroboros protocol with countermeasures to protect a network node, as we discussed, when it is new or returning after an absence. Let's get a little zoom in over here. So let's see here. Ouroboros is the consensus protocol at the heart of the Cardano blockchain. Given the continuing development and increasing uptake of Cardano, Ouroboros has progressed along its planned upgrade path. Ouroboros Classic was the first provably secure proof-of-stake protocol. Ouroboros BFT was an interim solution that enabled the Byron update. Ouroboros Praos continued the development of Ouroboros Classic. Ouroboros' evolution will go a step further with Ouroboros Genesis, which is currently planned to be delivered by Q3 or Q4 of this year. If I had $1 for every time I said Ouroboros, I'd probably be a quadrillionaire, but I digress. The Ouroboros story so far. A blockchain is a distributed ledger replicated across machines called nodes. Because there is no single central authority, a mechanism must exist to guarantee the consistency and immutability of all ledger copies. That mechanism is the consensus protocol. The protocol also sets incentives for the nodes to validate new blocks and add them to the chain. Ouroboros divides Cardano's time into epochs, which are subdivided into slots. Slots represent short time periods when blocks can be created. Ouroboros Classic is proven secure when most of the nodes are online and have consistent copies of the ledger. Adversaries could not predict which node would be the next slot leader, the node that gets to add a block to the chain, making attacks very expensive, which is good. Disincentivizes attack vectors. Ouroboros Praos increased the randomness in selecting the next slot leader and added countermeasures for other possible attacks. This is nice because as technology is getting more advanced, as Silicon Valley continues to improve and silicon nodes and all this and quantum computing that and AI, we need to have security be next level. Why not? Ouroboros Genesis will address the situation where a node first joins the network starting from the Genesis block or rejoins after a long absence. Such nodes are in a vulnerable situation until they catch up. For example, a long-range attack occurs when an adversary attempts to rewrite the history of the chain. The adversary accumulates a large stake to allow them to rewrite the history of the chain. The adversary accumulates a large stake to secretly create blocks faster than the main chain. Then, when the alternate historical chain is ready, the adversary attempts to switch the main chain to the adversary's chain. So just kind of a bait and switch and building upon the authority that they have. The Genesis implementation will mitigate long-range attacks unless the syncing node becomes eclipsed. An eclipse attack occurs when the adversary attempts to surround the victim node with malicious peers, obscuring the real network. Very interesting. So the latest developments. Genesis introduces the following new concepts. Ledger peers, lightweight checkpointing as a temporary fallback/override. Limit on eagerness, or LOE. Genesis density disconnections, GDD. Limit on patience, LOP. And the Genesis state machines. And we're going to break down each one of these. But it's very interesting because a lot of people don't think about those attack vectors and the maliciousness between nodes and nodes that start from something and have to build upon that history and people that can taint it. And so this is very nice. I mean, I The best I've set up were just Bitcoin nodes, but even I was mining it, many people were mining it even without nodes. So this is nice because they're really ahead of the curve. The deepest departure from the Genesis paper was an early architectural decision to preserve the Praos node's limitation on rollback. Under Praos, a Cardano node will not roll back further than 2160 blocks without manual intervention. As outlined in the Genesis paper, a node under Eclipse attack could only select extensions of an adversarial chain for years, and then, when it finally connects to a node, serving the honest chain, abruptly rolling back any number of blocks. So an abrupt rollback. Because it is not necessary in practice for a node to have unlimited rollback capability, the architects instead prioritize the rollback limit, which is key to many bounds on resource usage. Dropping it for Genesis will remove a staple invariant invoked by a significant portion of the preceding engineering work. Moreover, as long as the sinking Cardano Genesis node has access to a healthy, honest peer, it should, like the Praos node, not require a rollback of more than 2160 blocks. Eclipses are potentially a more significant threat to the Genesis node than expressed in the paper, which doesn't directly address them. These attacks endanger the Genesis safety property, since an eclipse lasting longer than a few seconds is enough for a sinking Genesis node to potentially select 2161 blocks from an adversarial chain despite faithfully implementing the Genesis density comparisons. Without knowledge of the honest chain, the Genesis rule will simply select the densest chain currently accessible. In an eclipse situation, that might not necessarily be the honest chain. This contrasts with the Genesis paper, in which an eclipse node and its users are merely delayed, confused, misinformed, etc. That carries related risks, but does not compromise the safety or liveness properties, since the node could eventually connect an honest peer and therefore recover. Considering only a Praos network in which nodes theoretically never fall behind, eclipses can still be detrimental. The key difference with Genesis is that a Praos node inherently caught up can withstand a much longer eclipse before there's a significant probability that it might commit to an adversarial chain. However, even without considering the extra vulnerability during synchronizing, a Praos node does need some defense against eclipses. Our defense is to introduce the concept of ledger peers within the peer selection logic to sufficiently bound the probability and duration of eclipses. While synchronizing, a Genesis node adjusts its ledger peer configuration to drastically reduce the probability of becoming eclipsed. And without eclipses, the Genesis node will never select 2161 blocks from an adversarial chain. The changed peer selection works like this. By examining a recent stake distribution, a Genesis node samples peers that have participated in maintaining the network, greatly reducing the probability of selecting malicious nodes. That's good. That the Genesis node selects sample peers that have participated in maintaining the network. So looks like they're making it more robust, which is great. A fallback, lightweight checkpointing. The Genesis paper establishes that the best chain within a healthy Praos network will have more blocks than any other in a fixed window of slots immediately after the two chains intersection. The only exception is if the Praos network is not healthy. A severe network outage would justify executing a disaster recovery plan, one that requires off-chain cooperation among stakeholders to rewrite the chain within the outage's interval to repair the honest chain. After that happens, the Genesis rule would again favor the honest chain. However, a disaster recovery plan is inherently difficult and expensive to execute. At least in the meantime, a simple checkpointing mechanism would let a sufficiently large cooperating subset of vigilant stake pool operators quickly and easily maintain control of the network during or immediately after the block production outage. The logic is simple and consistent with the rest of the protocol, a configuration file specifying a list of block number and hash pairs, each of which causes any other block with the same block number to be treated as invalid. That checkpoint's configuration data should be used with care and acquired only from trusted sources. Ideally, the recovery plan's eventual execution will permit and even require that reactive additions to the checkpoint lists are temporary. The only permanent checkpoints will be set that ensures the Byron's era's Genesis keys are no longer relevant to the Cardano chain. A limit on eagerness. Since ledger peers effectively prevent eclipses, a syncing node can assume that it has at least one healthy peer serving all of some honest chain. The safety property is therefore directly ensured by simply prohibiting the syncing Genesis node from ever selecting more than 2160 blocks of a chain past the intersection of its ledger peers' chains. It will only select blocks that all ledger peers agree on, which almost certainly include an honest peer. The constraint is named Limit on Eagerness, or LOE, because the syncing node must not eagerly commit to the best block it has seen so far. An adversarial peer may be able to serve its alternative blocks much faster than any honest peer. And this is good because I think this limit, to just grossly generalize it, is nice because it kind of has a little bit of a restraint, so it's not so eager to go to an adversarial block instead, because it could be faster, right? The malicious one could be faster than the honest peer, serving honest historical blocks. So that's cool. Genesis density disconnection. It's trivial for an adversary to abuse the LOE to cause the victim to stop syncing blocks, violating the syncing node's liveness property. There are 3 ways to do so. The attacking peer claims it has no more blocks. The attacking peer serves an alternative chain. The attacking peer claims it has alternative blocks but also does not serve them. So they can get creative. The fundamental rule from the Genesis paper directly mitigates the first 2, which is not having any more blocks or serves an alternative chain. If two peers are serving different chains and at least one of the chains has no fewer than 2161 blocks after the intersection, Genesis favors the chain that has more blocks in the fixed window of slots after the 2 chains intersection. An honest chain will always win that comparison. Recall that a shared prefix reflects a chain intersection, even if one of the chains is simply the extension of another. The Genesis node will favor the honest chain by disconnecting from the other peer. This action is known as a Genesis density disconnection, or GDD. After enough GDDs, the remaining peers' intersection will be farther along the historical honest chain. Nice stuff. This is quite a lot to wrap our heads around. Some of it can be simply understood, but it's nice to increase the efforts to keep the honest nodes and to disincentivize the malicious activity. And why not? That's good. Limit on patience. The third attack vector is the most difficult to analyze. The GDD is disabled since the peer is claiming to have more blocks. That is, it's claiming that its block count in that fixed window will increase if it is permitted more time to serve more blocks. An honest peer is always genuinely making that claim until the syncing node indeed has all the honest blocks, but an attacking peer could make that claim in bad faith. The limit on patience, or LOP, ensures that a peer claiming to have more blocks must actually send them and do so promptly. The key complication is that even honest peers cannot maintain perfect responsiveness for hours on end. They will occasionally have latency bursts, etc. This makes sense. For this reason, LOP is implemented as a leaky bucket for each peer, where the leakage is the rate of processing blocks while the peer has claimed blocks and is serving them slower than some generous minimal rate. But each honest peer's bucket capacity will be high enough to absorb bursts of latency typically expected from healthy ledger peers. Again, for me to grossly generalize this, as I understand it, we're getting some leniency here to commit, because we know that bad actors, they're just going to say it. They're just talking it, but they're not walking the walk. They'll be like, yeah, I'll deliver the blocks out of bad faith. Now, incoming this, where the honest ones, they're going to do it out of honesty, they will commit, but there's going to be latency bursts, there's going to be a variety of stuff. So this is nice because it's going to give more flexibility, rigidity, and at the same time disincentivize these attack vectors, which is great. The Genesis state machine. The Genesis state machine. The Genesis node will disable LOE, GDD, and LOP once it concludes it is caught up, for 2 important reasons. First, a caught-up node in a Praos network fundamentally must mint the best block it can in a slot which it's elected. For example, if such a node were still using the Genesis rules, a strong adversary could potentially abuse the LOE to temporarily prohibit the victim from selecting the block it just minted, thereby preventing it from propagating to the network. It's difficult to bound the system-wide fallout of such a vector, And so the Genesis node should behave exactly like a Prowess node whenever it's not syncing. Second, a caught up node does not need as many peers as a syncing node, since it is not as vulnerable to eclipses. Therefore, the significant extra load on the network due to all nodes maintaining inflated ledger peer counts is unnecessary and undesirable. This makes sense to me because if I fire up my Bitcoin like miner or something, like obviously I'm referencing stuff and I'm like adding to the node. And so clearly caught up nodes they don't need as much as a syncing node. Like I think we can all understand that. The caught up node does not need as much as a syncing node. That's just like undeniable. That's just very easy to understand, that part. So yeah, this is like a lot to digest, guys. We're almost done with this one. The Genesis state machine manages the node's transitions between considering itself caught up or not. When caught up, the node disables the LOE, GDD, and LOP. A node concludes it is caught up if these conditions are met. It has enough ledger peers. All peers claim to have no additional blocks, which a well-tuned LOP ensures must happen soon enough. The node has already selected the best of the peers' chains. This is more robust than trusting the age of the local selection, etc., since an attacking peer might be able to trigger such thresholds, causing the victim to prematurely lower its defenses. A node falls back to syncing if the tip of its chain is too old, e.g. 20 minutes or so. Notably, this will happen during the lifetime of the node's operating system process if the machine sleeps for long enough, e.g. a user closes their laptop lid for a while. So the next steps. The above design has stabilized over the past year or so. While it's still evolving slightly, there have been no major changes. IOG has been collaborating with Twig during the past several months to implement and test it. The first Genesis-capable implementation is scheduled for release Q3 or Q4 of this year. At this stage, the greatest remaining unknown is the degree of optimization necessary to compensate for the increased peer count required to prevent eclipses. Until then, the imminent Bootstrap peer design serves as an increment towards Genesis. The Bootstrap state machine is a simpler variant of the Genesis state machine. While syncing, a node only communicates with Bootstrap peers, every single one of which is trusted, and hence the LOE, GDD, and LOP are unnecessary. In contrast, Genesis will allow a syncing node to safely include untrustworthy peers as long as it's not eclipsed, i.e. as long as one peer is honest, which will permit retiring the Bootstrap peers, thereby decentralizing the infrastructure for syncing nodes and fulfilling the promise of Ouroboros Genesis. So this is nice. As I understand this, the fulfillment of this design and this design update is to increase the robustness and make this a lot more sensible and pragmatic, especially for the good actors, because bad actors, there's a variety of ways that they can grief. So it makes sense. A lot of it's highly technical. I'm not a developer, but some of the stuff is easy to understand in terms of syncing versus like not syncing, and also leniency and bad actors doing stuff in bad faith, especially to those nodes that are starting from the ground up. Taking a look at Emergo. Some interesting stuff from Emergo. NMKR aims to simplify NFT creation for artists, creators, and businesses by leveraging the Cardano blockchain. With their no-code platform, anyone can turn their assets into NFTs. I like that. No-code platform. Why not? Opening doors to new opportunities in the digital world. Emergo partnered with NMKR to raise commercial awareness and adoption of tokenization services, providing new ways for businesses and individuals to harness the power of blockchain and digitize their assets for a global audience. Furthermore, NMKR Pay simplifies NFT sales on Cardano by acting as a bridge between traditional currencies and blockchain. This service built for NMKR allows NFT creators to easily integrate a transaction gateway for their Cardano-based NFTs through an API. Very nice. Why not? Why not? Take a look at this clip. NMKR, let's pause this. NMKR is an NFT and tokenization service leveraging the Cardano blockchain. NMKR Pay is a fiat on-ramp for Cardano projects utilizing the NMKR platform to mint tokens. Enables NFT creators to integrate a payment gateway for their tokenized assets. Removes transaction friction as buyers are not required to have ADA in their wallets to buy the minted NFTs. Fiat on-ramp. Swipe a little card, get that Cardano NFT. Nice, I like that. Provides an easy to integrate API that takes debit and credit cards and enables them to make blockchain-based payments. I like this. Very good. Very good. That's clean. That's clean. NMKR Pay is very nice. This is low key. A lot of people are not even like taking a look at the Emergo updates, and they're like fuego. NMKR recently announced a significant step forward for accessibility in the NFT space. NMKR Pay is now available in Japanese. This move removes a key barrier for both Japanese NFT creators and enthusiasts alike. I like that. Japan's government has also recently made strides to actively support the expansion of its domestic Web3 industry with new frameworks surrounding DAOs, investments, stablecoins, hiring, and more. Finally, by prioritizing accessibility through language support, projects like NMKR can play a key role in bridging the gap and accelerating global blockchain adoption. Fabulous. I love that. Now, before we wrap up, guys, I wanted to also remind you, if you didn't know already, that the Senate is taking a big L, a W for crypto, and legislation that would have passed a lot of anti-crypto nonsense has been disapproved. So a resolution of disapproval submitted, and we can see a nice breakdown of that here also. Let's go over here. SAB 121. Chris OSR retweet this. SAB 121 is going down in flames in the Senate. Add this to a bunch of nonsense that Gary Gensler has been doing, his pervasive misconduct, his nonsense with the CFTC. Like, Gary is not liked both in the public and both in the government. So I think that the future for Cardano is going to be very exciting, guys. At this point, I think it's just up to the president. The president may just veto this. So we'll finish off with this. 51 votes. Well, at that time, Senate just voted to repeal Gensler's anti-crypto SAB 121 rule. So now the president has to vote. Does he pass this anti-crypto nonsense? What is he going to do? And it could cost the election. So we'll see what happens with this. I'm optimistic, guys, on Cardano. Very long read for the Genesis update, but sometimes those long reads are worth it. Like Charles said, sometimes people just don't want to read, but sometimes you just got to read. The power of words, And I'm excited to see what NMKR does with this beautiful simplification of no code, paying for like something even without Cardano. These type of efforts onboard people in very beautiful ways. So I like that a lot. What do you guys think about the future of Cardano? Let me know what your price predictions are. Hit that subscribe, hit that like. Links to everything's in the description. And I'll see you guys in the next Angry Crypto Show.